today, we have a small business owner who enjoyed many years of success in his business, but then reached the point of burnout and unhappiness. And if you follow my story, you know that I have been there too. That's why I'm so excited that he is here today to talk with us because he found a renewed sense of purpose after going on a personal retreat and wrote an entire book about it. Please welcome Wade Stewart.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk about this because I feel like there are so many business owners that need you, that need this book, and how much it has like changed your world. So I'm excited to dive into that today with you.
Yes, me too. Me too.
So tell us about things like how things were going in your business before you reached the point of burnout.
It was really interesting. When I built my business, I designed a business plan. I put a lot of thought and effort into figuring out how my sales were going to increase over time. And sales is going to drive so much, right? So it's going to drive how soon you need to hire somebody, how busy you are, and then scaling your business. I'm doing the books right now, but once I get to a certain size, I need to hire somebody to do that. And is it outsourced or is it internal? And so all these things were kind of on rails because I had planned for everything to go the way that it was going to go. Great. And I went to the Small Business Associate, the SBA, and I had a score guy look at my business plan, and he said, "Okay, well, this looks great. How much money do you need?" And I said, "Well, I don't really need anything. The idea is that it's just gonna, you can see in the plan, it's just going to fund itself." So away I go, and within the first the first quarter was pretty quiet. I obviously grew because you have to grow somewhere from zero. And then it started ramping up very quickly because all of my contacts from my pre-business life all knew that I was starting a business. So they started talking to their friends. What I did not plan for how well that was going to work out. So I had 30% quarter over quarter growth for the first year. And by the third quarter, I was ready to hire somebody. And according to my plan, that wasn't going to happen for 18 months. So I had seriously underestimated how fast I would grow. Ironically, I had come up with an excellent plan of getting out of the business and going back to work because I didn't want to jeopardize my family. I didn't want to jeopardize, going broke or going bankrupt over it. So I was trying to plan this very well. Well, the other thing happened. So, right, this is the best problem, as we all know to have.
I call those princess problems.
Yes, yes, and this was definitely a princess problem. And so I started just working everything. So I was working 13, 15 hours a day. I was working 6 and 7 days a week. I was and I was wearing all the hats. I was doing the books. I was doing the taxes. I was going on service calls to work on people's computers. I was planning server implementations for a three city office setup, and everything was just on the shoulders really hard. And when it came time to hire that first person, I barely had time to even put together anything. So I got an HR consultant. He helped me out and build the job description and all that. And I was still getting help. I got a business coach to teach me how to best build positions for employees, and that was fine. And I did get a good first hire, but it wasn't enough. It just kept ramping up. And so now 2 or 3 more quarters, 30%, 30%, 30%. And so it was just too much. And I was stopping at fast food joints all the time. My whole diet was fast food. It was Starbucks in the morning. I hope they give me some money for this. Starbucks in the morning, McDonald's in lunch, and then at dinner it was bring a pizza over. And it was horrible. So I was gaining weight. I was not at home. I wasn't sleeping well. All this stuff raised my blood pressure. So I had physical manifestations of this negativity. I had emotional manifestations in the sense that I didn't even know who I was anymore. I was so focused on doing the work and doing the job and having all these hats. The one hat I lost was the Wade hat. The Wade hat was gone. It was just absolutely gone. And the father hat and the husband hat, the partner hat, all that stuff was gone. So that's pretty much what took me to the breaking point.
It sounds like the analogy that I think in my mind, because I've been there as well, everybody out there listening has probably felt the same way. It's like your hamster on the wheel. And then eventually your leg gets caught and you're like, oh gosh, now I only have one leg and now I'm like a little handicapped because I'm trying to do all the things and I know that I need help,
Hmm.
but I don't have time to get it because I've got like this thing is rolling. It's like the giant snowball is happening. And I think that's really how we come to burnout. And I know that this is something that we as like entrepreneurs and business owners we don't talk about a lot because we'd rather talk about the good and the the 30% quarter over quarter, but this is something that's really affecting entrepreneurs, and I think it's great that you've opened this conversation to say it's okay. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Here is a great way to help prevent it. Or if you're in the thick of it, like we both were, here's how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And why do you think that so many people fall into that burnout trap? Do you think it's just that day to day and so many hours? And you think it reflects back to what you mentioned about how you want to be everything to everyone?
Mhm. Yeah, I like it. I think of it as the boiling frog, right? So you put them in cold water and you just start turning on the heat and they never know. They just never know. And I think it's very similar to the position that we put ourselves in. And how long do we wait? Do we wait until uh, y- we start seeing these symptoms? And in some cases, that's too late, especially if you're the type of person that just kind of holds that stuff back and tucks it away. So it's very difficult to figure out where that is. And I wish there was a I wish there was just this little bell that would go off right when it was the right time. But we talk about being good planners, right? When we a good entrepreneur is a good planner, and that is somebody who's getting all this stuff out at first. And I think this is something that they need to think about too. They need to think about themselves.
I think that's something that we kind of, like you mentioned, we lose ourselves where
Hmm.
we've got this business rolling and it's exciting to be successful, way more successful than you thought that you would be. And I really like the analogy of the boiling frog. What do you think are some things, some signs that people can recognize as that heat starts to tick up before they get to burnout?
Right. Well, like anything that you lose your mind in, maybe some of the tips are the same ones that one would have when you're looking at an addiction. So other areas in our life are suffering, or we are taking the good things in our life and downgrading them in order to put get the pill or get the shot or whatever it is. There
Or get
is
the
that,
client? Yeah.
or get the client. It's
Yep.
an adrenaline of continuing to grow and build. And if you're doing that, you're doing the right thing. So why would you stop? You would stop when you see that other things that you enjoy and do and have scheduled in your life start going off to the wayside, and you say, well, I'll just skip it this way. I'll skip the gym this week because I've got that client meeting. And then next week comes along, oh, I've got this report I need to finish, and I'll just do it at the gym day. You need to start looking at that schedule and when are you taking those ones off. I think that might be the best bellwether.
And two, one that I recognize is when you're skipping those family functions. Like there's a
Mhm.
picnic and you're like, "Oh, I'll just skip it. I got to get this thing done for this person." And pretty soon you become that person where people are like, "Man, I'm just not going to invite you anymore cuz you're never going to come."
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Absolutely. I mean, if you make a habit of, I mean, if you're the, I think if you're the type of person that really makes a habit of gratitude, and you're probably making connections with your friends, and
Mhm.
you're doing that on a pretty consistent basis. So you call somebody up and you say, hey, how's it going? When those calls start falling off, that might be another good tip.
That's a really good indicator. Now, what do you think is the best way if someone's feeling stuck in their business? So, let's say they're not a brand new entrepreneur, they're through this, they've been through this process and maybe it's starting to get a little warm in that pot and they're like, "Uh-oh, I'm in there." Now, what's the next step that they should do, in that process?
I think confirming it for themselves is probably the best thing, because not every time you might feel the heat just because you're having a bad run, right? You
Mhm.
might have a couple bad months, and so you're like, oh, right. And you're working really hard without much result. That would be another indicator that, well, no, I just need to change what I'm doing. I think in the same instance that is true. You need to look at what you're doing and how it's benefiting you, and then kind of run from there. Take stock. Look back on your schedule and go, what have I rescheduled? What are the things that I'm missing? And then once you establish that, now you've established in your mind, okay, I do have a problem. That would be, I think that's the first step in acknowledging it and really internalizing it and saying, okay, I need to do something about this right now.
I agree. Now, one thing that I mean, we both talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we meet some entrepreneurs that love what they do, and then we meet some entrepreneurs who loved what they do, but now they're in a different place in their business and maybe they don't love it as much. How important is it that we enjoy the work that we do every day?
It is really important, but I think I think there is a thing that goes on, and it's this chase your passion thing, right? And not to say that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but sometimes people's passions aren't what others would think, right? So if you're making beautiful dresses, for example, and one person making beautiful dresses would say, that's my passion, is making beautiful dresses. And then if you really sit down and talk to him and say, do you mind stabbing yourself in the finger with a pin every single day, 37 times? Probably not. Okay, no, those I don't enjoy. Okay, so is it the hours of sewing and then noticing that you just did it a little bit off kilter, so you had to pick it all out and redo it again? Is it that? Oh gosh, no, that's not it. So is it when you finish the dress and you're doing your Instagram photos and you're doing your posing and stuff like that? Is that, oh yeah, that's what it is. So when you kind of narrow down what specifically it is, and that's something I talk about in the retreat, is kind of drilling down to the nugget, that little nugget of which that you find so compelling in your life, and then run with that. And you might be able to apply that in many different places. And that's wonderful, because now you can establish more knowledge about yourself, because I think if we drill down a little bit, you find that there's quite a few things you could do.
And two, I think it's one of those things where the first couple times it might feel uncomfortable or you're like, am I doing this right? And that's why I'm really excited for you to share more about your book, because I know that you really go into that process of
Mhm.
how this works and how you might feel and how you might not. But I know that I love to talk about goals. Like, that is something that I enjoy so much. But how often do you think, as business owners are kind of going through this process, they are drilling down, how often do you think that business owners should evaluate those goals?
So the nice caveat would be to say it depends. It
Totally.
depends. It depends a bit on the business, right? But I would say, in terms of the broader business goals, I think at least, at the absolute minimum, annually. Um, but like for me, I like a real goal review, a reassessment. Really, it's like, okay, I'm coming up with new goals. At least 6 months. So and that's all for business. Then for personal, I kind of go with a 12-week year, right? So it's
Yeah.
3 months, right?
Hmm.
So, um, so yeah, so I would say at least annually, but probably biannually. And I think that would be fantastic as a goal setting process. Now, checking in with your goals as a different exercise, I think one should do those at least every 2 weeks. I do it weekly because I have a lot of I have a lot of frogs and pots, and I need to check their temperatures, and so I check in on those little guys once a week and make sure that everything's going all right.
Now, I know that you have kind of a unique process that you've created because, of
Mhm.
course, you have been through, you created this process because you saw a need there. Tell me a little bit about your personal process through the personal retreat.
So the big thing with the retreat for me was trying to find something that I could do on my own. At the time, I needed it. I was very overwhelmed. I was very busy. I had no time, despite the fact we were growing very quickly and everything. And it would appear that I had a lot of money. I didn't really. I mean, I was just really busy and I was making a fair amount more, but I was very guarded about that because that has to go toward scaling and scaling with when and once I knew that my sales were off of my expectations, I didn't know when the other shoe was going to drop. So I couldn't just take that money and spend it and then all of a sudden have a down year. And then now I'm behind and all that. So I needed to have something cheap or free, and I needed to have something that I could do on my own and not pay somebody to do. So I looked around for just like a checklist of a way that you could take yourself on a personal retreat, and I didn't find one. So I built one myself, and I took a little bit, those old high school career mapping tests, and you fill out this thing, you talk about what you like, you don't like, and classes you like, and all that kind of stuff. I kind of built it a bit on that. So I took a little bit of that. I took a little bit of a few articles I'd read on looking back at your childhood for things that you really loved and enjoyed, and or just the past. Like if you were middle-aged and you look back in college, I took these classes on fencing and my gosh, I really enjoyed fencing. How can I bring that? And so I'd take a dive into that kind of stuff. Also, an assessment of your knowledge and your skills. So the knowledge being of things you know about in the world, and then your skills is more or less, typing or working with hand tools or whatever, those kinds of things. And assessing all of this in a really broad spectrum, and not only what you enjoy, but what you don't like. To your question earlier, is like, what about just don't like what you're doing? Well, this is a great time to dig into those things and find out. And so through this process of working with whoever's taking the retreat, or me at the time, was to just jot those things down and score them and just kind of put them in a manner that I can read. And then after it's all over, kind of go through all of that and see what kind of trends or interesting things just kind of leap out at you, and then maybe build new goals based on those kinds of things. Then that goal might be, starting a new branch of your business. It could be dropping a product that you really didn't like supporting anyway in favor of something else. And those kinds of things was the impetus to kind of build that framework.
Where do you think the best place to take a personal retreat is? Is that something that I could do here in my office, or do you think it's better to go off site? What are your thoughts about that?
I think primarily you want to do something that is not distracting. So, and that's going to be different for everybody. So, I'll tell you about 3 retreats I've done that have all been really good, and they might not sound so. So, the very first retreat I did, I went to Point Defiance, Tacoma, which is this lovely, huge park, and you can get lost in that sucker. And I did. I got lost in it. It was on a Sunday morning, and it was cool, and it was sunny, and there was nobody out there. So I had 8 hours to myself. Nobody there. Fantastic. That was a great retreat. The next retreat, about 6 months later, I go to the same park and I'm starting to drive up, and it says, um, oh, what is it? There's some race that they have over the Narrows Bridge, and it starts in Point Defiance and it goes to Gig Harbor. And so I was there, and it says, nope, closed. We're doing the race today. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I'd planned this date out for weeks. I can't flex it. What am I going to do? So I just need to go. I'm going to go over to this nearby Starbucks and sit down and figure out what I'm going to do. And so I sit down, and the Starbucks is very busy. This is the before times, right, where you could go to a coffee shop and and experience that. And I was sitting there, and I was just kind of reading over my notes, and I just kind of got in the zone all of a sudden, and I just started working on my retreat. And I stopped, and I went, wait a minute, I'm in the busiest, loudest place I could possibly imagine. Well, it was the din of the sound that was almost like white noise, and it just helped me tune everything out, and I had a great retreat. And then the third one was, both of those options weren't available, and I went to University of Puget Sound, which is a local college, well, it's a public property, so you can use their library. You might not be able to check anything out, but you can certainly walk in there and sit down at a table. I did my retreat then in the summertime when there were no students. And so I had a very quiet library to myself, and that worked out very well. So I think in every case the distractions were minimal because I had white noise, I had nature, or I just had nobody around.
I think that's a really good perspective too, because you might think, oh, Starbucks isn't going to work for me, but really it might, because it might help you get into that zone you mentioned.
Mhm.
Now, tell me about time frame. So, is it for a set length of time that you do the personal retreat?
Yeah, so it's typically built toward there's a bit of preparation, and most of it's prepping for doing the retreat itself, and that is to get in the mindset of being focused and and just being able to be present while you're working on this stuff. So I give you some exercises to go through the few weeks before the retreat. The retreat itself, 8 hours maybe. For most people doing it the first time, it's 8 hours, and then subsequent retreats can be much shorter. You hear the word retreat, and all you imagine is Fiji Islands and beautiful
I
places.
mean, you
And
could go there too, right?
I guess I'd be distracted by Mai Tais myself, but I mean, it's whatever works for folks, you know. Although the thought of going to somewhere in a forest or something where it's very quiet, and then having an evening to enjoy, that sounds good too.
Yeah. So now I know that the personal retreat, this is the second edition that just launched last week. Tell me where people can find out more about personal retreat, where they can find out more about working with you.
Great. So the personal retreat website is personalretreat.training. So instead of a .com, we have a .training. And when you go there, you'll get a pop-up that talks about the book, so you can immediately check that out. There'll be a link to Amazon there. There'll also be some links in order to contact me if you want to talk about more detailed things about retreat. I do a plan to offer some coaching programs that might be beneficial to those who need help, but the retreat is designed to be able to just handle all by yourself. So and then there's all tons of social media. Please try the LinkedIn link that'll be on the website, and you can check me out there and follow me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited for you to share the personal retreat with so many people, because I know that it is going to be able to help people kind of get themselves out of a potential funk that they might be in. Tell me what your number one tip for people, if someone is like where you were at and struggling and you're on the hamster wheel, what's the best tip that you would give them right now?
I think if I'm seeing somebody that's there at this point, I would tell them. I would first tell them, you're doing a great job. You've done great. Whether you're on the hamster wheel because you're just struggling to make ends meet, or you're on the hamster wheel because you're just overwhelmed with too much work. I would invite them. I would make an invitation to take a break. I would invite them to take a break, and I'd ask them what they would need to take that break. And it doesn't have to be what you're asking of me. Just tell me what you would need. And if you can get their wheels turning a little bit about that, they might realize that it's important and it's possible.
I love that. I love that. And so, like you mentioned, I will link everything in the show notes as well as the description box below this video. So, anybody that's looking for more information about personal retreat can find it. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate you taking time out of your super busy schedule to visit with us. Good luck with everything.